You think you know everything about TV's most beloved spooky family? Think again. From Jackie Coogan shaving his head and doing his own makeup to win the Uncle Fester role after being rejected, to the house set having bright pink walls that only looked gothic in black and white, the 1964 classic had more bizarre behind-the-scenes secrets than you could imagine. John Astin's coat pockets were lined with asbestos so he could safely extinguish cigars in them. And the family's beloved polar bear prop was actually a Hollywood rental with its own wild history. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about the Addams Family 1964. Fact 1. Syracuse University building inspired their home. When viewers first glimpsed the towering, imposing Addams Family mansion in 1964, they were actually looking at architectural inspiration that came from a real academic building hundreds of miles away from Hollywood. The iconic Gothic home that housed television's most beloved spooky family drew its creative design from Syracuse University's Hall of Languages building, a magnificent structure that still stands proudly on the New York campus today. The Hall of Languages was designed by architect Horatio Nelson White and constructed between 1871 and 1873, making it nearly a century old by the time the Addams Family premiered. This impressive building follows the Second Empire architectural style, which was popular in the mid to late 1800s and is characterized by its distinctive mansard roof, ornate details, and imposing presence. The Second Empire style originated in France during Napoleon III's reign, and was chosen specifically because it conveyed both elegance and a slightly foreboding atmosphere. What makes this connection even more fascinating is that the Hall of Languages was actually the very first building constructed on Syracuse University's campus, and it originally housed the entire university when it first opened. The building's cornerstone was laid on August 31, 1871, and it was officially dedicated on May 8, 1873. The structure was modeled after the Gridley Building in downtown Syracuse, which was also designed by the same architect. The television show's creators recognized that this architectural style perfectly captured the essence they wanted for the Addams Family home. The building's three-story height, ornate Victorian details, and slightly mysterious appearance made it an ideal inspiration for a family that delighted in the macabre. While the actual mansion seen on screen was created through painted backdrops and studio sets, the foundational design elements came directly from this distinguished academic building. The Hall of Languages continues to serve Syracuse University today and remains one of the most iconic buildings on campus, forever linked to television history through its connection to America's favorite spooky family. Fact 2. The house set had pink walls. One of the most surprising secrets hiding behind the Addams Family's perfectly Gothic atmosphere is that the interior house sets were actually painted in bright, cheerful pink. This shocking revelation completely contradicts everything viewers experienced when watching the show, where the family's home appeared to be decorated in appropriately dark and moody colors that matched their macabre lifestyle. The decision to use pink paint on the walls wasn't made to be ironic or as some kind of inside joke among the production team. Instead, this color choice was a purely technical decision based on how different colors appeared when filmed with the black and white cameras and lighting equipment available in the mid-1960s. The bright pink walls, when captured by the black and white film stock and processed through the studio's lighting setup, translated into the perfect, shadowy gray tones that viewers saw on their television screens. This filming technique was actually quite common during the black and white television era, when set designers and cinematographers had to think carefully about how colors would appear once they were converted to grayscale. Many shows from this period used unexpected color choices on their sets because the final black and white result was what mattered most to the viewing audience. The Addams Family production team understood that the pink walls would create exactly the right mood and atmosphere they needed to make the family's home feel appropriately spooky and mysterious. What makes this fact even more amusing is imagining how different the show might have felt if it had been filmed in color during its original run from 1964 to 1966. The Addams Family, with their dark clothing and serious expressions, would have been standing around in what looked like a bright, bubblegum-colored dollhouse. The contrast between their gothic personalities and the cheerful pink surroundings would have created an entirely different viewing experience, one that might have undermined the show's carefully crafted spooky atmosphere and turned their mysterious mansion into something that looked more like a child's playhouse than the home of television's most beloved macabre family. Fact 3. Jackie Coogan won Uncle Fester by self-auditioning. Jackie Coogan's journey to becoming Uncle Fester is one of Hollywood's most determined casting stories, proving that sometimes persistence and creativity can overcome initial rejection. When Kugan first auditioned for the role of the eccentric, bald Uncle Fester in 1964, the casting directors turned him down completely, telling him he wasn't right for the part and sending him home without the role. Most actors would have accepted this rejection and moved on to other opportunities, but Kugan had a different plan in mind. Instead of giving up on his dream of joining the Addams Family cast, he decided to take matters into his own hands and show the producers exactly what he could bring to the character. Kugan went straight home from that failed audition and immediately shaved off all of his hair, creating the completely bald look that would become Uncle Fester's most recognizable feature. But removing his hair was only the beginning of Kugan's self-directed transformation. He then spent time carefully studying the Uncle Fester character from Charles Addams's original cartoons, paying close attention to every detail of the character's appearance and personality. Using his own makeup supplies and costume pieces, Kugan created a complete Uncle Fester look from scratch, including the pale, ghostly complexion and the dark, sunken eyes that would make the character so memorable on television. Armed with his new appearance and fully committed to the role, Kugan returned to the casting directors and essentially gave himself a second audition. This time, instead of just talking about how he might play Uncle Fester, he was actually embodying the character right there in front of them. The transformation was so complete and convincing that the producers immediately realized they had been wrong in their initial assessment. Kugan's bold move paid off perfectly, and he was hired on the spot to play Uncle Fester for the show's entire two-season run. His willingness to physically transform himself and his deep understanding of the character helped create one of television's most beloved oddball relatives, proving that sometimes the best way to get a part is to simply become the character you want to play. Fact 4. Ted Cassidy played both Lurch and Thing. Ted Cassidy's contribution to the Addams Family went far beyond his iconic portrayal of the towering butler Lurch, as he literally lent a hand to bring another beloved character to life on the show. While most viewers recognized Cassidy's impressive 6'9" frame and deep voice as the family's loyal servant, very few people realized that he was also the person behind Thing, the mysterious disembodied hand that would emerge from wooden boxes throughout the Addams mansion to help with various household tasks. The dual role came about as a practical solution to the show's production needs and Cassidy's willingness to take on additional responsibilities. Thing was designed to be a helpful family member who appeared from small boxes placed strategically around different rooms in the house, as well as from the mailbox outside the front door. The character required someone who could perform precise hand movements and gestures that would convey personality and emotion without any dialogue or facial expressions to rely on. Cassidy was contracted separately for his work as Thing, reflecting the additional time and effort required to perform both characters during filming. The logistics of playing both roles created some interesting challenges during production, particularly when scenes required both Lurch and Thing to appear at the same time. In those situations, the show's associate producer Jack Vogelin would step in to operate Thing while Cassidy performed as Lurch, ensuring that both characters could interact naturally within the same scene. The physical demands of playing Thing were quite different from portraying Lurch, requiring Cassidy to squeeze his large frame into tight spaces beneath sets and inside specially constructed boxes. He had to learn to convey a wide range of emotions and reactions using only hand movements, finger positions, and gestures. This included everything from Thing's helpful nature when delivering mail or pointing out important information, to more expressive moments when the character would snap his fingers impatiently or wave goodbye to family members. Cassidy's dual performance created a unique situation where one actor was essentially having conversations with himself during scenes that featured both characters, though viewers at home had no idea that the same person was bringing both of these memorable family members to life through completely different types of physical acting. Fact 5. Lurch's famous line was improvised. One of television's most memorable catchphrases came to life through pure spontaneity. When Ted Cassidy improvised what would become Lurch's signature line during the filming of The Addams Family. The show's creators had originally planned for Lurch to be a largely silent character, following the pattern established in Charles Addams's original cartoons, where the towering butler communicated mainly through groaning and physical gestures rather than actual speech. According to the original script and character design, Lurch was supposed to shamble around the mansion performing his butler duties, while making only occasional grunting sounds and expressive moans that the family would somehow understand perfectly. This approach would have made him similar to a classic movie monster character, imposing and mysterious, but without the ability to engage in normal conversation with the family or their guests. However, during the shooting of a scene where the family rang the servant bell to summon Lurch, Cassidy decided to add something extra to his performance. As he appeared in response to the bell, he delivered the line, "You rang?" in his distinctively deep, resonant voice. The delivery was so perfect and unexpected that everyone on set immediately recognized they had witnessed something special that could become a defining element of the character. The writers and producers were so impressed with Cassidy's ad-libbed line that they immediately began incorporating more dialogue into Lurch's role throughout the series. What had started as a purely physical performance evolved into a speaking part, though Lurch still maintained his trademark economy with words and his preference for simple, direct responses to the family's requests. The famous phrase became so closely associated with the character that Lurch would repeat, "You rang?" in response to the servant bell throughout the show's two-season run, and it remained his most recognizable line in all future Addams Family adaptations. Cassidy's spontaneous creativity during that one scene completely changed the trajectory of the character and gave television audiences one of the most quoted butler lines in entertainment history, proving that sometimes the best creative decisions happen when actors are given the freedom to experiment and add their own touches to their performances. Fact 6. John Astin originally auditioned for Lurch. The casting process for The Addams Family took an unexpected turn when John Astin, who would eventually become the perfect Gomez Addams, initially walked into auditions hoping to land the role of Lurch, the family's towering butler. This surprising revelation shows how different the beloved show might have been if the original casting plans had worked out as initially intended by the production team. Astin's journey to the Addams Family began after his well-received performance in the 1963 film The Wheeler Dealers, where he starred alongside James Garner and Lee Remick. The positive audience response to his work in that movie caught the attention of Filmways, the production company behind the Addams Family, and they contacted him about joining their upcoming television project, based on Charles Addams's popular New Yorker cartoons. When Astin first met with the show's executives, they offered him the part of the butler, who was originally conceived as the main character of the series rather than just a supporting family member. The early version of the show was structured quite differently from what eventually aired, with the butler character serving as the central figure around whom the family's strange adventures would revolve. However, during his audition and discussions with the producers, Aston expressed serious doubts about his ability to play the role effectively. He found it difficult to envision himself as the silent, imposing butler character, and felt that his natural personality and acting style didn't align with what the role required. Aston was honest with executive producer David Levy about these concerns during a follow-up meeting, explaining that he couldn't see himself successfully portraying the character as it was written. Fortunately for television history, the producers recognized that Aston's energetic, charismatic personality would be much better suited for the role of Gomez Addams, the passionate and eccentric family patriarch. This casting switch proved to be one of the most important decisions in the show's development, as Aston's portrayal of Gomez became one of the most memorable and beloved father figures in television comedy, while Ted Cassidy's eventual casting as Lurch created the perfect butler character that complemented the family dynamic beautifully. Fact 7. Gomez's coat pockets were lined with asbestos. One of the most dangerous behind-the-scenes safety measures on the Addams Family involved John Astin's costume, which required special modifications to protect him from a fire hazard created by his character's eccentric habits. Gomez Addams was frequently shown smoking cigars throughout the series, but what made this particularly unusual was his habit of casually extinguishing the lit cigars by stuffing them directly into his coat pockets, treating the burning tobacco as if it were completely harmless. This quirky character trait was part of Gomez's overall eccentric personality and fit perfectly with the family's supernatural abilities and strange relationship with things that would normally be dangerous to regular people. The visual gag of Gomez nonchalantly putting out a lit cigar by shoving it into his jacket pocket was meant to show viewers that the Addams family operated by completely different rules than ordinary families, making light of situations that would cause panic for normal people. However, the reality of filming this recurring bit presented serious safety challenges for the production team. Real lit cigars and fabric clothing don't mix well, and the obvious risk of setting John Astin's costume on fire during filming required the prop department to come up with a creative solution that would allow the visual effect to work while keeping the actor safe from burns or worse, injuries. The prop makers decided to line the inside of Astin's suit coat pockets with asbestos, a material that was widely used in the 1960s for its fire-resistant properties. At that time, the serious health dangers of asbestos exposure were not yet fully understood or widely publicized, so it seemed like the perfect solution to prevent Gomez's costume from catching fire during the cigar extinguishing scenes. This safety measure was sponsored by Dutch Masters Cigars, which supported Gomez's frequent cigar smoking as part of their advertising arrangement with the show. The asbestos lining allowed Astin to perform the cigar gag repeatedly throughout the series without worry, though today we know that this solution created a different kind of health risk that the production team could never have anticipated at the time, reflecting how much safety standards and medical knowledge have changed since the 1960s. Fact 8. Wednesday's middle name is Friday. The beloved character of Wednesday Addams carries a hidden secret in her full name that connects directly to a famous children's nursery rhyme and reveals the clever thought process behind creating names for the Addams Family television show. Wednesday's complete name is actually Wednesday Friday Addams, with her middle name serving as both a playful reference to her primary name and a deeper connection to the dark, melancholy personality that would define her character throughout the series. This naming choice becomes even more interesting when you understand that none of the characters in Charles Addams's original New Yorker cartoons had any names at all. The family members were simply referred to by their relationships to each other or their roles within the household, leaving them as mysterious, unnamed figures who appeared in single-panel comic strips from 1938 onwards. It wasn't until the television producers decided to adapt these cartoons into a full series that anyone needed to come up with actual names for the characters. The inspiration for Wednesday's name came from the traditional nursery rhyme Monday's Child, which assigns different personality traits to children based on the day of the week they were supposedly born. The specific line that influenced her naming was, "Wednesday's child is full of woe," which perfectly captured the somber, serious nature that the creators wanted to give to the Addams family's daughter. Her consistently gloomy disposition and fascination with dark subjects made the Wednesday connection feel completely natural. Adding Friday as her middle name was a creative decision that extended the days of the week theme while also creating a subtle joke about her perpetually mournful personality. The choice suggests that Wednesday's woe-filled nature is so strong that it spills over into the next day as well, making her not just Wednesday's sorrowful child, but also someone whose melancholy extends into Friday. Actress and poet Joan Blake is credited with suggesting the name Wednesday to Charles Addams, and the producers eventually developed names for all the other family members as well. Some interesting alternatives were considered during the naming process, including the possibility of calling Gomez by the name Rapelli instead, though fortunately they settled on the names that became television classics and helped define these characters for generations of fans. Fact 9. The theme song was multitracked by one person. The instantly recognizable Addams Family theme song that sounds like it features a full chorus of singers was actually performed entirely by one person using a recording technique that was relatively new for television production in the mid-1960s. Composer Vic Mizzy not only wrote and arranged the catchy tune that would become one of television's most memorable opening themes, but he also sang all three vocal parts that viewers hear during the opening credits by recording multiple tracks of his own voice and layering them together. This creative solution came about because of budget constraints at ABC, where studio executives were reportedly hesitant to allocate funds for hiring multiple professional singers to perform the theme song. Rather than compromise his vision for how the song should sound, Mizzy decided to use multi-tracking technology to create the effect of a group performance while keeping costs down for the network. The multi-tracking process required Mizzy to record each vocal part separately, singing the same lyrics multiple times but in different pitch ranges to create the harmony that gives the theme song its distinctive sound. He had to carefully time each recording to match the rhythm and tempo of the previous tracks, then blend all the vocal layers together with the instrumental accompaniment that featured a harpsichord and bass clarinet as the dominant instruments. The famous finger snaps that punctuate the theme song were also Mizzy's spontaneous addition to the composition. When he first presented his musical arrangement to the producers for approval, he improvised the iconic snapping sounds during his demonstration, and everyone immediately recognized that they worked perfectly with the song's rhythm and spooky atmosphere. The finger snaps became such an integral part of the theme that they were written into the final arrangement as essential percussion elements. Ted Cassidy, who played Lurch, also contributed to the vocal elements of the theme song by adding the words neat, sweet, and petite at specific moments during the opening sequence. Despite the song's popularity and the way it perfectly captured the show's playful spookiness, RCA Victor released it as a 45 RPM single that unfortunately failed to chart on any music popularity lists in the United States, though it has remained beloved by fans for decades. Fact 10. They had a real lion named Kitty Cat. The Addams family's unconventional choice of household pets included a full-grown African lion named Kitty Cat. And this wasn't just a special effect or animation trick, but an actual living, breathing big cat that appeared on the television series. The lion was professionally trained and handled by Steve Earl Martin, who worked with a team of experienced animal trainers including Ralph Helfer, Tony Helfer, Frank Inn, Juanita Inn, Monty Cox, and Ron Oxley to ensure the safety of both the animal and the television crew during filming. Kitty Cat served as Morticia's beloved pet in the show's mythology, representing the family's casual attitude toward creatures that most people would consider extremely dangerous. The character was mentioned in dialogue throughout the series, with Gomez once noting that Kitty can't stand the taste of people, and Wednesday claiming that the lioness had once eaten a zookeeper and gotten a very upset stomach as a result. The show also established that Kitty Cat's father had apparently eaten Dr. Mabogo's father, which explained why the fictional veterinarian refused to treat lions. Most of Kitty Cat's appearances on screen were actually accomplished through carefully edited stock footage rather than live interaction with the human actors. The production team filmed several standard shots of the lion performing basic actions like walking down the main staircase of the Addams mansion set, growling menacingly into the camera, and moving through various rooms of the house. These pre-recorded sequences could then be inserted into episodes whenever the script called for Kitty Cat to make an appearance, allowing the writers to reference the family's exotic pet without the complicated logistics of bringing a live lion onto the set for every filming session. The use of stock footage was both a practical and safety consideration, as working with large predators on a television soundstage presented obvious challenges for cast and crew safety. By filming Kitty Cat scenes separately and editing them into the episodes during post-production, the show could maintain the illusion that this dangerous animal was casually wandering around the family home while keeping the human actors safely away from any potential harm. The technique was so seamless that most viewers never realized they were watching pre-recorded footage rather than live interaction between the family and their unusual pet. Fact 11. The polar bear prop has Hollywood history. The imposing 11-foot-tall stuffed polar bear that stood prominently in the Addams family living room, known to the family as Bruno, had a remarkably extensive career in Hollywood that spanned decades and included appearances in numerous major television shows and films. This wasn't just any ordinary prop created specifically for the Addams family, but rather a well-traveled piece of Hollywood history that had been working in the entertainment industry since at least the early 1950s. Bruno originally came from a taxidermy collection and was acquired by a production company that specialized in renting props to television and movie studios. The bear quickly became a popular choice for productions that needed an impressive, slightly menacing decorative element, and it spent years moving from one Hollywood set to another as part of the rental stock that studios could use for their various projects. During the second season of The Addams Family, Bruno became a more prominent character and even had an entire episode devoted to him called The Addams Policy. In this memorable episode, Uncle Fester accidentally burns the polar bear to ashes with a blowtorch, leading the family to refer to him affectionately as Smokey for the remainder of that particular story. The episode showcased the family's casual attitude toward their valuable possessions and their ability to find humor even when their beloved household decorations met unfortunate ends. After The Addams Family ended, Bruno continued his Hollywood career and appeared in many other productions, including the 1991 Addams Family movie starring Raul Julia and Angelica Houston, creating a direct connection between the original television series and the later film adaptation. The bear also appeared in Tim Burton's 1994 film Ed Wood, starring Johnny Depp, and even showed up in the disco-era classic Thank God It's Friday, demonstrating his versatility across different genres and decades. Bruno's extensive resume also included appearances in countless other television shows and films that remain unknown to the general public, making him one of the most experienced non-human actors in Hollywood history. The bear's ability to add atmosphere and character to any scene made him a valuable rental property that continued working in the entertainment industry long after most viewers had forgotten about his origins as part of the Addams Family household decorations. Fact 12. Young Jodie Foster voiced Pugsley. Long before Jodie Foster became a two-time Academy Award winner and one of Hollywood's most respected actresses, she spent part of her childhood providing voice work for animated television shows, including a memorable appearance as Pugsley Addams in a special crossover episode that brought the Addams family together with Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Inc. gang. At just 11 years old, Foster lent her voice to the character of Pugsley in the 1972 episode titled Wednesday is Missing, which was part of the new Scooby-Doo movies series. This crossover episode was particularly significant because it served as both a reunion for several original Addams Family cast members and a testing ground for what would eventually become a full animated series. John Astin returned to voice Gomez, Carolyn Jones reprised her role as Morticia, Jackie Coogan came back as Uncle Fester, and Ted Cassidy once again provided the distinctive voice of Lurch. However, Ken Weatherwax, who had played Pugsley in the original live-action series, was not available for the voice work, creating the opportunity for young Foster to step into the role. The episode's plot involved the Mystery Inc. team arriving at the Addams Family mansion when their mystery machine gets stuck in the mud outside the spooky house. Lurch helps bring the teenage detectives inside, where Gomez and Morticia hire them to work as temporary housekeepers while the family goes away to the Okefenokee swamp. The adventure unfolds when Wednesday goes missing, leading to the investigation that gives the episode its title. Foster's involvement in this animated special was part of her early career as a child performer, during a period when she was taking on various voice acting roles alongside her live-action work in films and television. Her natural talent for voice work was already evident at this young age, and she brought the right energy and personality to match Pugsley's mischievous but lovable character. The success of this crossover episode led directly to the creation of a full animated Addams Family series in 1973, and Foster returned to voice Pugsley in that series as well. This early voice acting experience was just one of many projects that helped establish Foster's versatility as a performer years before she would become famous for dramatic roles in films like Taxi Driver and The Silence of the Lambs. Fact 13. All the bizarre props were stolen. The end of the Addams Family television series in 1966 led to one of Hollywood's most unfortunate cases of prop theft, as virtually every unique and bizarre decorative item that had made the family's mansion so memorably strange disappeared from the studio lot after filming wrapped up. The Addams house had been filled with an incredible collection of unusual objects that perfectly captured the family's macabre taste and helped create the atmosphere that made their home feel like a genuine museum of oddities. Among the stolen items were some truly one-of-a-kind pieces that had become iconic elements of the show's visual design. The most famous missing prop was a mounted swordfish head that had a human leg grotesquely protruding from its mouth, creating a darkly humorous wall decoration that exemplified the family's twisted sense of interior design. Another memorable stolen piece was a stuffed, two-headed giant tortoise, which had served as both a conversation piece and a perfect example of the kind of bizarre natural specimen that the Addams family would consider a treasured household decoration. The collection also included numerous other collector's items and antique pieces that had been carefully selected by the show's set designers to create the feeling that the Addams mansion was indeed a museum, as referenced in the famous theme song lyrics. These props ranged from genuine antique weapons and armor to custom-created oddities that were designed specifically to look like the kind of strange artifacts that would appeal to a family with supernatural interests and a love of the macabre. The theft occurred during the chaotic period immediately following the show's cancellation, when studio security was likely focused on other priorities and the valuable props were left unguarded on the sets. The loss was particularly devastating because many of these items were irreplaceable custom pieces that had been created specifically for the show, while others were genuine antiques that had significant monetary and historical value beyond their use as television props. The disappearance of these props means that very few physical reminders of the original Addams Family television series survive today, making the stolen items highly sought-after collectibles that would be worth enormous amounts of money if they ever surfaced at auctions or in private collections, though none of the missing pieces have ever been recovered or publicly identified. Fact 14. Charles Addams thought the characters were half as evil. The creator of the original Addams Family cartoons had mixed feelings about the television adaptation of his work. And while Charles Addams appreciated the financial benefits and genuinely loved the catchy theme song, he felt that the TV version had significantly softened his characters in ways that didn't match his original vision. Addams famously described the television characters as being half as evil as the family members he had created for his New Yorker cartoons, suggesting that the transition from print to television had diluted the darker, more sinister elements that made his original family so compelling. This difference in tone came about because television producers in the 1960s needed to create characters that would be suitable for family viewing and advertisers, which meant toning down some of the more genuinely disturbing aspects of Addams's original cartoons. Producer Nat Perrin deliberately took what he called a less evil approach to the characters and stories, emphasizing lighter, more comedic elements that would make the family seem quirky and eccentric, rather than truly frightening or dangerous. The original cartoons that appeared in The New Yorker from 1938 onwards often featured much darker humor and more genuinely unsettling situations than anything that appeared on the television show. Addams's cartoon family delighted in genuinely macabre activities and showed a more sinister attitude toward the normal world around them, while the TV family was portrayed as fundamentally loving and harmless, just with unusual hobbies and interests. Despite his reservations about the characterizations, Addams did collaborate with the television producers and helped them develop names and backstories for characters who had been nameless in his single-panel cartoons. However, his lack of enthusiasm for the final product was evident in his viewing habits, as he rarely watched the show when it aired on Friday nights because he was usually away from home during those times. The creator's mixed feelings about the adaptation reflect the common challenge of translating artistic work from one medium to another, especially when the new medium has different audience expectations and content restrictions. While Addams enjoyed the financial success that the television show brought him, he clearly felt that something essential about his original vision had been lost in the process of making his characters suitable for mainstream television audiences. Fact 15. Both shows avoided each other's guest stars. Television history witnessed one of the most unusual casting rivalries when the Addams Family and the Munsters premiered during the exact same week in September 1964, creating a situation where two competing networks were launching remarkably similar shows that featured spooky families living in Gothic houses. This unexpected scheduling coincidence led to an unofficial but deliberate policy where both production teams actively avoided hiring guest stars who had appeared on the competing series, creating an invisible barrier between the two shows that lasted throughout their respective runs. The rivalry was particularly intense because both shows occupied nearly identical positions in the television landscape, featuring black-and-white family sitcoms with macabre themes that were designed to appeal to similar audiences. ABC's The Addams Family and CBS's The Munsters were constantly compared by critics and viewers, even though the creative teams behind each show insisted that their programs were fundamentally different in approach and tone. John Aston, who played Gomez Addams, frequently emphasized in interviews that the two shows had distinct philosophies about their unusual families. He argued that the Munsters featured characters who were physically monstrous but otherwise completely normal in their behavior and values, while the Addams Family presented characters who looked perfectly normal but were highly eccentric in their thinking and lifestyle choices. Despite these philosophical differences, the general public continued to view the shows as virtually interchangeable, which intensified the competitive atmosphere between the production teams. The guest star avoidance policy meant that both shows had to be careful about their casting choices and maintain awareness of what actors the competing series was hiring for their episodes. This created additional challenges for casting directors who were already working within the constraints of television budgets and availability of performers who could handle the specific comedic requirements of spooky family sitcoms. The unspoken agreement to avoid shared guest stars reflected the broader competition between the networks and demonstrated how seriously both production teams took the challenge of distinguishing their shows from each other. This casting rivalry continued throughout both series runs. Though ultimately neither show managed to completely escape the public perception that they were essentially two versions of the same concept, a comparison that has persisted in popular culture discussions for decades since both shows ended their original runs.